Hello friend, my name is Kuri and today we are going to be talking about Shiki. First aired in 2010, Shiki is a 22 episode horror anime created by Aniplex that tells the story of 3 different villagers in the town of Satoba. Megumi Shimizu is a 15-year-old girl that dreamt of a fabulous life in Tokyo before being killed by a vampire and resurrecting as an undead. Toshio Ozaki is the unfortunate doctor tasked with figuring out what is causing so many deaths in his town. And Natsuno Yuuki is a teenager that just recently moved to the town from the big city that finds himself in the middle of it all. The first opening for Shiki was literally perfect. I don't say that very often. In fact, the only time I said something was near perfect was with Lagrange, and even then it was near perfect. With Shiki's first opening, there was no drawback, there was no, oh well it would have been nice if they did blah 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 blah. I had absolutely no complaints whatsoever. The song used is Kuchizuke by Buck-Tick, and I honestly don't think the creators could have picked a better song to represent the series. It had a wonderful horror-ish sound to it, and it was still really catchy, and it just complemented the show very well. I have the same praise for the video itself. The ominous depiction of the characters being turned into skeletons, the blood flowing through veins, and the transitions were nothing short of amazing. The second opening, not so much. I mean, it was a great opening, don't get me wrong. The song changed to Call Den Requiem by Canon X Canon. And that song is very befitting of a horror anime, but I feel like it would have been better suited for something prettier. I can't really explain it. It just kind of sounded like one of those songs that would have been better for an anime that wasn't a tragedy / psychological thriller type. As for the video, it's still a dark opening that's just as fast-paced as the first, and it follows a similar manner as the first, but like I said, the first was just perfect. I genuinely do not understand why the anime creators felt it was necessary to change the opening halfway through the series. To be perfectly honest, I was not thrilled with either of the closings. They were boring, they were cliche, and the songs really weren't that great either, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about them. As in, that's it. This is one of the best horror anime I have ever seen, and a large amount of my praise comes from how amazingly written the show was. Shiki tells a story through the eyes of 3 different people, as I mentioned earlier, and in doing so, the writers were able to give us a very 3-dimensional story that gave us all sides of the story. We're first led to view the Shiki as villains, as these horrible creatures that need to die so the villagers can live. But that was only because we were seeing the story from the perspective of the teenagers that were being attacked and the desperate doctor that was doing everything he could to save his patients. As the story goes on, we see one of the town's monks become very close with one of the more docile vampires, and we get to see more of the vampires in their everyday lives. So it starts out as a, oh no, the Shiki are evil and scary story. It turns more into a story about 2 species of people that just desperately want to live. And oddly enough, I found myself really pitying the Shiki, and for once, I really wanted the bad guy to win. It was very reminiscent of a Frankenstein film I watched when I was little, where Frankenstein was being chased by a frightened and angry mob, despite not actually deserving death. That feeling only grew stronger as the story evolved and the humans began to change. The doctor changes from a passionate healer to a man that's desperate and exhausted and is willing to use the villagers' hysteria and fear to create a witch hunt. Natsuno started out as a bratty kid that hated the village because it wasn't what he was used to, but he changed into a person that was willing to do everything he could and work against the vampires so he could save that village. Kaori didn't improve, but she definitely did make a major change in the series where she starts out very helpless and afraid and really just wants to stick her head in the sand and ignore everything bad that's going on around her, into someone that is finally pushed off the edge from her fear and hysteria to where she's finally willing to fight for her life, even if that means killing her father. The pacing for all of this was exceptional. Nothing was rushed and nothing took too long, nothing felt dragged out or unnecessary. The story developed steadily in a way where it really dragged you in and it kept you there from beginning to end. I was completely involved in the story. I'm not gonna lie, the character design got really weird at parts. Some of the characters looked really cool, like Seishin and Megumi, but then there are others that just... I'm sorry, but some of them just look downright stupid. A lot of that had to do with the hair design, because a lot of the characters had normal hairstyles, but then there were some that were very... It really reminded you of those awkward, like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon hairstyles that are just outlandish for the sake of being outlandish. And some of the characters looked just downright disturbing. They didn't really look like they belonged in the same series as everyone else. I understand this was to emphasize how weird they were, how they were sort of shunned, but every time they were on screen, I was completely distracted by their hair or how, like, their face was shaped. And it was just very bizarre, and sometimes it did kind of take away from what was actually going on in the scene. That aside, the visuals are amazing. The coloring is fantastic, and I have an immense amount of praise for the design used on the eyes, especially with the Shiki. The color palettes used were gorgeous, I loved the shading, and the artists really brought the horror elements to life by a subtle change in hue and lighting. The animation complemented all of this extremely well too. There was nothing jumpy or jerky, the animation was very fluid, and I can't think of any issues I had with how it was animated. In the end, I absolutely adored this anime, and I'm so glad I purchased this box set from FYE before getting on the plane, because I had been looking at it for a while and I was kind of worried I wouldn't like it as much as I did. So I'm really glad that it turned out, and I'm really glad I got to watch this, because really this is a great anime. It was very fun to experience, and it gets a little gory at times, but if you're okay with a little bit of anime gore, and if you like horror anime, I really suggest watching this if you haven't. I mean, the story was beautiful and dark, the English dub was really impressive, the soundtrack was fantastic. Oh my god, the soundtrack. It brought everything together splendidly. Anyways, those are my thoughts on Shiki. Have you seen it? Whose side were you on, the Shiki or the humans? Let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, you can find all of my social media as well as my Patreon in the description. Happy unbirthday, and I'll see you later. Bye! New type of character to watch, but after episodes like 1 or maybe 2, it just got... It just became obnoxious and annoying, and I was easily tell the difference between tribe members, because the big breast tribe members had a very Western feel to them. They definitely had sort of like a European style in clothing choices, whereas the flat chest tribe